Right, we're going to kick off with Saturday's Express. Lewis, you've got this.
Yes, Sunak says, quote-unquote, hate marches are an affront to British values. This is Sunak. He wants planned protests on Armistice Day, which is...
That's Sunday.
Sunday.
So we should clarify, what are the marches? Who's marching?
It's the people supporting Hamas. It's free Palestine from the Jews, and they want to parade past the Cenotaph, which is the holiest of holies for the war down in this country.
Of course, many of the people marching on that day are saying that they're not pro-Hamas. They're saying that they are pro-Palestine. You're saying there's no distinction in your mind.
I think the net effect is the exact same thing, and I haven't heard much from anybody about the horrors that happened in Israel and what the...
Well, yeah, I mean, it strikes me that if you are for the people of Palestine, the first thing you should do is condemn Hamas, because they obviously represent the biggest threat to those people for all sorts of reasons. But Nick, this is really about... I suppose it's about a freedom of speech issue. I mean, it's a freedom of assembly. We have a group of people, they think they're trying to get 1 million people to march, this pro-Palestine march in London, but it's deliberately, tactically planned to be on the same day as Remembrance Sunday, which is obviously going to cause the most upset. So what do you do at that point? The implication of this article is that Sunak wants to ban it, but can't really.
Yeah, or he's urging people to be responsible in lieu of the ability to ban it. Yeah, because how do you actually ban it? That's the thing. It's in bad taste. It's deliberately designed to create as much havoc as possible, as you've said.
Yeah.
And there's even a sense that some people perhaps are stirring up the sort of patriot side, whatever you want to call them, saying, you can't let this stand. And even people like Douglas Murray have been accused of that on Twitter, that, saying we can't allow this. But then the problem with that is the average person comes out, does something stupid, or is framed to be doing something stupid on social media, and then the narrative turns against them. So what's best to do probably is to not engage.
It does feel like a potential powder keg, doesn't it, this kind of thing, when you have these numbers of people and they're all antagonistic to each other. But Lewis, I mean, you come from a free country, the United States of America, as you pointed out, the best country in the world.
Why?
Freedom of assembly is important, even if we disagree with the...
Not in a time of war. I think habeas corpus comes in. I think that's the term. It's not in a time of war. We're in a time of war right now. And obviously, I don't think people realize the wars that are going on. There's the big war, which is Team World against Britain. And there's also the fact that there are millions of people in this country who hate this country.
Yeah,
that's interesting. I mean, a lot of people have said a lot. I mean, what shocked me about a lot of these sort of pro-Palestine gatherings is the open support for Hamas, not from the majority, I should say, but from a few. Because even if it's a few, most marches, if a few members of that march start saying outrageous, horrific things, everyone else shuts them up and distances themselves. That doesn't appear to have been happening here.
No, and it's interesting what Lewis says about a time of war. I suppose the problem is it's not actually a formal war. But when we saw Zelensky, for example, he did sort of shut down various democratic mechanisms during the war, and people applauded it. But of course, this isn't a war, but it's a very tense situation. I have to say, I was in the car tonight on the way here, and we had to stop for ages for a pro-Palestine march to go by. And it is pretty intimidating. And I was thinking they were chanting from the river to the sea, and I was merely infuriated. But I thought if I was a Jewish person in that car, maybe I would also be somewhat intimidated quite reasonably. And imagine that on a massive scale on Remembrance Day. And I think people are extra concerned because we already know in this country we have a two-tier justice system. We're almost sick of saying it. Christians can be persecuted for praying in their head. White men can be discriminated against in jobs, etc., etc. But now I think people are shocked to see that it happened to Jewish people, that if you intimidate Jewish people, the Met Police will defend the people intimidating them. I think there's a lack of protection. That's why people are saying, Maureen Lipman is saying she's less safe in Israel, less safe than Israel. Sorry, London is now less safe than Israel.
Well, we're going to get onto that story a bit later on. But yeah, disturbing stuff. Anyway, we're going to move on to The Guardian. The Guardian are leading with another Israel-based story. What's this one, Nick?
Yeah, this is Israel rules out ceasefire until hostages are freed. So Blinken has come in, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken, and he's urging a sort of temporary ceasefire. But Netanyahu is essentially refusing that until the release of more hostages by Hamas. That's pretty much where we are. There's also this issue of the ambulance. Hamas saying you've attacked an ambulance. Israel saying that was housing a terrorist cells being used as a Hamas terrorist cell. And so, the classic kind of things in war. So, yeah, that's...
You're going to get a lot of that. I mean, especially since Hamas have a policy of having their operations in civilian areas, in civilian buildings, using civilians as human shields. I mean, Israel can't rule out. I mean, the point is, Israel can't have a ceasefire until the hostages are returned, surely. You know, if people really want a ceasefire, again, these demonstrations, if they really want a ceasefire, why don't they call on Hamas to release all the hostages? Because that's the only way that's going to happen.
Well, I think sometimes they do talk about the hostages. Most of the time they forget about the hostages. The interesting thing is that you develop your fighting style based on your enemy. And what's happened in Israel is the Israelis have developed their fighting style based on who their enemy is, and their enemy is a bit reckless with.
I think that's putting it mildly. I mean, but there is still not a moral equivalence in my view. You have Hamas who deliberately target and murder and rape and torture civilians, and you have Israel that goes out of its way to avoid civilian casualties. That, to me, suggests that there's just no moral equivalence there. And, of course, civilians are going to die in war. That's always going to happen. It's absolutely horrible. And no one thinks that's a good thing. Well, but this moral equivalence thing, I don't buy.
No, I agree with you. And the reason that what's happened is that Israel has morphed. The Jews of Israel, the Jews have morphed from this with a victim attitude to we're not going to take this stuff anymore. And it's sort of unseemly for the Jews to be doing this. I think it's unexpected. And I think the Palestinians are going, oh, look at us, we're vulnerable and victims. And so they've kind of changed positions. But
well, a lot of this stuff seems to be about narratives and you know, and how this is played out. Do you have any further thoughts, Nick, or should we move on?
We can move on if you want, because I have more thoughts, but it'll just get me in more trouble on Twitter. So
well, it's not worth it then, is it? I want to protect you from the swarms on Twitter. We're going to move on to the front cover of Saturday's Telegraph. Lewis, tell me about the BBC for a change. You love the BBC.
I would love the BBC if they gave me a job.
You would, wouldn't you?
I would love the BBC if I got a pension from them. And that's what the BBC's in crisis over, a £1.7 billion pension bill for the stars. And they're paying 42% of staff salaries in pensions.
Well, it's saying that within a decade, these pension bills have tripled, right? So they really are rewarding, but it's for the stars. We're talking about the stars here. We're not talking about, you know, the people who clean the corridors. We're talking about the big names, right? Yeah. And it's, you know, it's taxpayers' money. It is. Or license players' money, right?
No, it's taxpayers. It's everybody's. Everybody has it. It's basically. The BBC was licensed to spend money because people love the BBC. It's one of those sacred cows in this country, the BBC, the NHS.
Well, you don't treat it like a sacred cow. You milk it quite a lot.
I would like to milk it. I don't get anything from them.
What do you think, Nick? I mean, obviously big stars expect big money. You know, that's the way it goes. But this does
I do.
You do. Yeah. You do. But, you know, you might have to work for the BBC for that. But what do you think?
Well, I love the BBC, as you know, but the problem is these are gold-plated pensions, Andrew. Imagine how much all that gold is costing for a start. Yeah. And it's costing £70 for every licence fee payer, and that's the big problem. And it's also a problem for the BBC themselves because it's limiting the amount they can spend on actual content and services, so they don't want it either. I mean, you know, it's easy to attack the BBC from outside the BBC. When you speak to people within it, a lot of them are struggling as well. Various programmes are being cut, flagship shows. So, not, you know, and I hate to be sympathetic with the BBC, but it's not great for them either.
No, if the BBC has a problem...
Although it is their fault.
Yeah, if the BBC has a problem, there's a simple solution, is they sell themselves off, is the government sells them off.
Well, I think it's probably going that way. I think the TV licence will probably be gone within the decade. Yeah. OK, finally, in this section, we're going to look at the front cover of the Daily Mail. Nick has got the details.
Yes, it's sex parties and the ruthless Tory clique who secretly make and then break prime ministers. And of course,
such an elaborate headline, isn't it?
I know. They're all these elaborate ones because they're coming straight from Nadine Dorris's bombshell book, Andrew. Yeah. You can't talk about the book without saying bombshell.
No, absolutely.
And they're really milking it in the Mail. This is going to go on for about 18 weeks. And it's her claim is, old Nadine, is that it's basically they brought down Ian Duncan Smith and Johnson. They caused havoc for Theresa May. They undermined Liz Truss. And it's quite funny. Some of it was Dominic Cummings. I saw on Twitter, now X, he was being asked by a Mail journalist for more details. And he said, there's a CIA, the KGB, they're all involved. And they just said, thank you. So they'll probably print that.
Yeah. Nadine Dorris, I mean, she always had a book at the end of all of this.
Oh, yeah.
She was, I mean, this is called In the Plot, the political assassination of Boris Johnson. Really dramatic. And we know that Nadine Dorris is basically in love with Boris Johnson at this point.
Well, there is that. And she says they're in a desperate attempt to block her book. But I'm thinking the book's details can't be any worse than the actual WhatsApps we've already seen.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Which are bad enough.
Her description of Michael Gove is that he binds all the dark arts people together. I mean, she's really going for the Shakespearean...
That's a compliment. Gove will love that.
Exactly. Of course. I mean, that's great.
Was that AI that wrote that?
The whole book.
Gove's basically like Kevin Spacey in House of Cards by that description.
Yeah, or Malcolm Tucker
or the devil.
Something like that.
But it's like then secretly then break prime ministers. Like that's something new in this country. I mean, of course, it's always behind the scenes.
Of course it is, absolutely. Read your Shakespeare. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
OK, well, that is it for part one. But coming up in part two, MPs telling people to go away, MPs letting people in, and some breathtaking incompetence. Not just from Lewis Schaefer. Go away.
Low blood.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie, second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel. And welcome back to Headliners, your first look at Saturday's newspapers. I'm Andrew Doyle, still here with Lewis Schaefer and Nick Dixon. So let's carry on with the stories, moving on to Saturday's Mail now. Concerns that observing a 2-minute silence might be too dangerous for a war veteran. Nick.
Yeah, this is Labour-run council is slammed for cancelling its Remembrance Day parade over health and safety concerns. It's Barrytown Council in South Wales. And they've cited unresolved health and safety considerations. And there's talk that someone injured themselves quite badly in 2018. So it's not clear how that's related. So people are calling it a feeble excuse and pointing out they put £8,000 into a Pride event. So the suspicion is you're merely worried about unrest and dealing with it in a kind of fairly feeble way and capitulating and just not having the event.
Yes, so lots of suspicions here, aren't there? What do you think, Lewis, is the explanation?
Well, the whole article does not mention what kind of unrest.
Yes.
I mean, what is the kind of unrest? It doesn't imply it. It doesn't say anything about the type
Why would
of
there be
unrest.
unrest? The Remembrance
Well,
Parade
because we're in a state of war right now, and these people represent an earlier time in a real in England. You know, I don't know what side, whatever side you're on. You might be against it, or you might be in favour of it.
I like it. Lewis sounds like the ultimate English patriot now. Yeah, of course. This is the same reason we discussed in the first section. Tensions are going to kick off, and Barrytown want to avoid that. I mean, it's going to be worse in central London, but it's going to be in Barrytown as well.
It seems so strange, doesn't it, to involve remembrance parades in a current conflict in the Middle East?
It doesn't seem strange at all, and I've been saying it for a while. There is a war going on. There are a couple of wars going on. There's the big war, which is Team World against Team Britain and patriotism of Team Britain. And part of the Team World thing is the Palestine issue. Team World is against ethno-states. They're in favor of multiculturalism.
I still don't really know what you mean by Team World.
What I mean by Team World is that the individual powers that have made up this world, the people who are in favor of Team World are against those powers.
I think they're probably pro-ethno-states, but the right kind of ethno-states.
I mean, that sounds about as vague as I would have expected.
Look, I mean, Lewis is right. I hate to say it. I mean, you know, when people are desecrating monuments and planting flags on things, it is a kind of warlike gesture.
Well, it sounds like a civilizational thing. It sounds like people who are opposed to.
But explain what Team World means.
Well, Lewis just means that you've got the Western alliance, and then you've got a sort of uprising of the global South plus others, or the Islamic world, and we're in a conflict where some of us are trying to maintain the old Western liberal alliance, which is like Europe, Israel, the United States, etc., the Anglosphere, versus the sort of new, you know, perhaps China, Russia, Iran.
But if you talk about the forces of liberalism against the forces of authoritarianism, I can certainly get on board with that.
No,
it's not quite as simple.
It's not.
That's why he's come up with his own. He's actually a genius.
You know,
for this,
I'm never going to understand this. So let's move on to the next story. This is in the Eye now. Another day, another Tory MP in trouble. Lewis.
Well, this is part of the whole same story. Tory MP Bob Stewart, he's the MP from Beckenham, and he is guilty of racially abusing an activist by telling him to go back to Bahrain.
So why did he say this? I mean, this seems needlessly provocative to me.
Well, I think the guy's from Bahrain. Bob Stewart.
I don't say to you go back to New York.
He is. Well, I've been called. I've been said that. Go back to America. Go back. I've had that said to me. I was in Dulwich Park.
Well, maybe you should.
And somebody just shouted at me. I mean, this goes on, but the reason why this is so egregious is he's basically in cahoots, this Bob Stewart's, with the Bahraini regime. Right. And he was outside going into the Bahraini thing, and somebody who'd been tortured by the Bahrainis.
Which he didn't know, to be fair.
Which he didn't know. He said, how much did you sell yourself for that? So it's like an insult. The Bahraini guy insulted him in a way.
So there's a backstory to this.
There's quite a backstory.
Yeah. So, but what about this, Nick? I mean, some of the comments here, go away, I hate you. I mean, shut up, you stupid man. I mean, that's just the rough and tumble of political conflict, isn't it? But this go back to Bahrain. I mean,
no. It's misrepresented, really. If you watch the video, which I have, immediately one thing Bob Stewart says is Bahrain's a great place. So he's actually very pro-Bahrain. So it's not consistent to say go back to Bahrain as if he hates Bahrain or is denigrating Bahrain, because he's saying it's a great place. That's how he starts. Then it's harder to hear this bit because it's a back and forth. But the guy starts it by saying, how much did you sell yourself to the Bahraini regime for? And so then Stewart just goes back at him in a fairly sort of low, you know, not in particularly nasty way. Even the prosecutor is saying it's not motivated by racial hostility. Right, okay. It's just a back and forth. But the guy is doing what we have now. He's saying, look, I was humiliated and felt upset. And as we now know, it's all about how the victim feels. Yeah. But what about Mr. Stewart's pain, who's saying, you know, I'm deeply hurt to have to appear in court for this. So what about that?
But, I mean, it says that he's been found guilty of racially abusing an activist, and at the same time, the judge says it's not racially motivated. Yes,
it was not motivated by racial hostility, merely demonstrating it, which is a very strange distinction.
That is strange.
It's as if his words were racist in themselves, but without the intention of being so.
Well, I don't think you can be racist without the intention of being racist.
No, I don't think so either, really.
Anyway. OK, we're going to move on now to the Daily Mail. Nick, what's this about opening borders up north?
Yeah, so SNP is accused of trying to distract from party meltdown as it vows to allow an independent Scotland to ramp up immigration and reintroduce EU free movement while keeping the border open with England. So it's just a kind of fairy tale story that Scotland are telling just for something to do. They're saying if it does leave the UK, which is a big if, they'll have perfect free movement with the EU, but they'll also have like a great border with England, and they're just saying
how's that going to work? I mean, it's not like we haven't seen these problems in Northern Ireland.
Right. In reality, it'll be much more difficult, but they're just saying it'll all be great without any proof.
Well, I don't understand why Scotland, the SNP in particular, this group of people who want Scottish independence also want to be under the thumb of Brussels.
Or
I mean, it's completely incoherent.
Or are they so arrogant that they want to let in anybody into the country? That's what happened to Britain. It's sort of this arrogance that you could let in millions of people and everything is going to be fine. You can't do it. And that's the team world. They're obsessed with the team world attitude. It's all one world, we're all one people, we'll all live together, kumbaya.
Well, they're not with the English, though. They want to be very separate from us.
Although they do want an open border, so I mean, you can't have it all ways, can you?
Well, they can in this hypothetical scenario they've outlined.
Wow. And according to this article, people are turning on the SNP, that they're losing 21%, are switching to Labour.
I mean, they really are. And Labour hasn't had a foothold in Scotland for a long time, but maybe things are starting to change there, which will be interesting because the SNP really, I mean, Scotland has been a kind of a one-party state for far too long, and the SNP have had so much power. So a bit of competition is healthy, right?
Yeah, though it's a pity that it's Labour who are also awful.
Well, any competition is better than none, I would say, perhaps.
Yeah,
OK, we're going to stick with Saturday's Daily Mail now, Lewis, and this is a story about treating cancer. What's this about? Well,
this is so much for the war on cancer. Top oncologist accuses government of breathtaking incompetence as the 3 state-of-the-art treatment centres remain unused. So it was a private company who owned cancer treatment centres a couple of years back in Reading, Northumberland and Newport. And then they went out of business. This is a private company. And so other doctors are saying, hey, to the NHS, get these 3 cancer centres online.
Well, why wouldn't they be? I mean, particularly during the pandemic when there were all sorts of problems with cancer treatment and people waiting for treatment and they couldn't get it. Of course they should be pouring money into these sorts of things.
Well, I don't know. I couldn't figure out why. There's maybe Nick knows why they're not being used. But my gut feeling is being an oncologist myself, is cancer is the least effectively medicated, treated disease.
Oh, I mean, it's terrible. People, there are all sorts of waiting lists. People, as it says in the article, their hospitals are struggling. Only 63% of patients starting cancer care within 2 months of an urgent referral. That is dangerous.
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying the actual care itself is deadly. Radiology, chemotherapy.
This is where you go into medical...
I'm going to tell you what it is.
You're not an oncologist, Lewis.
You know what? I know more than most of them. The single thing you can do,
we have you here out of pity.
I'll take it. Is to cut back on the sugar. Well, the sugar is the thing that makes the cancer grow.
We're going to be getting to sugar in the next part. Coming up, in fact, we're going to be talking about the latest on the culture wars, the battle of the sexes, and Lewis's favourite topic, grappling with sugar. See you in 2 minutes.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows...
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. Join me, Mark Dolan, Fridays and Saturdays from 9, Sundays from 10. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this? It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh!
No, thank you. My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners, your first look at Saturday's newspapers. We're going to start this section with the Mirror. Nick, this accusation, I keep hearing it, MPs manufacturing culture wars. I get sick of this, but talk to us about it anyway.
Yeah, it is annoying because they're obviously not doing that. But voters accuse MPs of manufacturing culture wars to distract from failings. And this is the King's College London's Policy Institute, which has examined how people feel about this. But it's also how they feel about being called woke. And this is interesting because 42% admit that being described as woke would be an insult now, where it was only 36% in 2022 and 24% in 2020. So that's a big change. But the other part is that 56% are saying politicians only talk about this stuff, culture war stuff, to distract from real issues. And that's where I completely obviously disagree with, but that's mad. I mean, you're either ignorant if you think that, or your head's in the sand, you're hoping the culture war will go away, or you're just falling for sort of gaslighting of leftists who pretend there's no culture war.
Is it just that people don't know?
They could, that's what I said, ignorance, but the Mirror might just also be putting a bit of a spin on it, because they could have gone with a different headline that, you know, most people don't want to be called, or 42% of people don't want to be called woke, which isn't the other big takeaway from this.
Although that's quite encouraging, because, you know, wokeness is essentially an authoritarian movement. I think people not wanting to be called authoritarian is quite reassuring, right?
Absolutely.
Because it's not a nice thing. Go on.
But who are those people who don't want to be called woke? It could just be people who don't want to be called woke. But the other people, the non-42%, would consider it a compliment.
Well, this is what worries me. I mean, the stats in this, it talks about 21% of men say they're anti-woke, 10% of women. That means most of the country is pro-authoritarianism. Because to me, anti-woke just means being liberal. Like, so, I mean, maybe some people don't know what these words mean.
No, that's what you think. But what woke is in the minds of someone who is woke is caring.
Yeah, that's right. They've fallen for that.
So
which is
it's
incredible.
not a thought. I mean,
like the idea that woke people are the only people who care. No, there are also liberals who care about other people. You know, people don't all support the idea of censorship of opponents. In order to shut them up in the name of compassion.
Yeah, but it's up from 24%, right, in 3 years to 42%, and that's amongst people who'll admit it. Then there's all the actors who wouldn't dare admit they wouldn't want to be called woke, and all the people lying, you know what I mean? So I think that is encouraging.
But it is annoying, isn't it, when people say, oh, the Tories or the MPs are just concocting a culture war. As far as I can see, they haven't done enough about it.
Right.
They need to make much more of it.
Exactly. They failed to tackle the existing culture war.
Exactly.
Completely.
But this story is incomplete because you don't know who are the people who think woke is bad or woke is good. If 42% of the people think that I'm repeating myself, think that woke is bad, right?
At least you remember that you're repeating yourself.
Yeah.
It's when you start saying the same thing in the same show and you don't realise it. That's where the problem is.
This is also Team World. Woke is Team World.
The thing about this stuff is that, like, I get sick because I've explained woke, anti-woke endlessly. I've done monologues about it. I've written books about it.
Yeah.
People still don't know what it means. It's like I may as well not bother.
I know. And they are, and I think, what about the positive, Andrew? They are very gradually realising, as the stats show.
That's true.
Keep writing several more books.
They are coming
or maybe that the reason why more people are anti-woke now is because more people know what it means.
Yes,
3 years
I think that's probably what it is. Okay.
This is one of the worstly, poorly written stories.
Okay.
It's the Mirror.
It's the Mirror. We'll let them off. Daily Mail now, Lewis. What's this one about ex-BBC presenter? What's this one?
56 years old, close to my age, says she is yet to get over discovering she was being paid tens of thousands of pounds less than her male counterparts. And so this woman, Ritula Shah, she worked for 35 years for the BBC, and she was paid £700,000 less than Jeremy Vine.
No, I don't think that's right. The article's about Ritula Shah, who is upset because she found out she was getting paid less than presenters who were sort of comparable. But it comes in the wake of another scandal, which was Samira Ahmed, who won an employment tribunal and found out she was getting paid £700,000 less than Jeremy Vine.
Okay, but this woman mentioned it.
Yeah, and this woman mentioned it.
But so she's thinking that she could have gotten paid a similar amount.
Well, not a similar amount, but a comparable amount. But the thing is, isn't Jeremy Vine more famous? And the problem with all of this stuff is actually when it comes to sort of presenters and public figures like that, they're all getting whatever money their agent can get for them, and they're all at different levels. It's not really about the job you do. You know, I mean, Nick,
I've got a sneaking suspicion Emily Maitlis was on more than me when she was at the BBC. Just for example, it's not really about. One thing is though. It's about how much you're prepared to ask for as well. Yes. And there is an argument that men apparently, are prepared to ask for more. Statistically, they'll ask. And I've been on the other side of that, where I did a job where a woman joined and got way more than me, and it turned out she just knew how to sort of negotiate and ask for it. She later got sacked and I got a raise, but that doesn't matter. The point is, I agree with you, Andrew. It's not gender-related, except in that one sense that men can just sometimes be more bolshy. There was an example recently where someone was not being paid for a call-in and the other person was, and it was a man, and the woman was not being paid. That's because often with those kind of things, unless you ask, they won't mention a fee. But if you ask, then there may be one.
Yeah,
which is what she said.
It's so different in the media, because obviously, if we were both working at a call centre and I was getting paid more than you for exactly the same job, well, that would be illegal, actually, wouldn't it? So the idea of paying different genders different money, that's illegal.
If it's been
illegal for decades.
No, if it's based on gender, but if it's not based on gender,
No, for the same work, I don't think they can get away with that kind of...
But if you were a high performer and getting a bonus, that would be
different, exactly.
Yeah.
But I don't think this is the case that it's simply that whoever, the BBC or whoever, is paying men more than women as a matter of principle. In fact, I'm almost certainly that can't be the case.
She said she did not ask for it. That's what she said.
Well, then isn't that her fault?
Yeah, it is. I would say that it's her fault, but I know what it's like. We all know to work at a company, let's say you weren't the first person in the door, say it's a TV program that does the news or something, and there were other people in place who were getting
Is this about you asking for a raise and not getting it?
I'm not saying it. It has nothing to do with me.
I think that's what this is about, Lewis. I told you we can't afford it. And what you asked for was frankly unrealistic. OK, The Independent now. And a story explaining the success of your podcast, Nick.
How dare you? This is sexist... And which podcast, by the way, because I have two. Sexist comments on TikTok more liked than non-sexist ones. This is a study... And it's someone's gone through. I mean, let's face it, a woman's gone through and studied this, so it's already skewed.
There's an example of the kind of sexist
because
comment.
Who would go through? Who else would go through? Indeed. So I thought I should have left Lewis Schaefer to say that.
I hope it was a man.
It was anyway. On average, sexist comments received 604 likes, right, compared to 375 for those not considered sexist. And men were liking more sexist comments, but crucially, both genders made the same kind of sexist comments. It's just that men liked them more.
Well, also, what qualifies as a sexist comment? Because I don't know always. Sometimes people get this wrong.
Exactly.
Sometimes people interpret things as sexist when they're not sexist. Lewis, on the other hand, I mean, most of the things you say genuinely are sexist.
Yeah. And I think what they're talking is maybe sexual comments.
Oh, is that what they mean?
No, I don't know. You don't know. They use the word sexist comments, but didn't give an example of what a sexist comment was.
What's the point of this article, then?
The thing is, TikTok is the Wild West. Like some of Generation Z are woke, but some of them are just absolutely non-woke. If you go on TikTok, it's like really sort of edgy humour.
They're really extreme, some of them, actually.
Yeah. And this is comments on challenges like the cake challenge, which focuses on the size of a person's bottom by seeing if a weightlifting bar will roll over them. So that's the context. So if you're commenting on that, it's already probably not going to be great, is it?
Yeah, I think any comment on that is going to sound...
It's not going to be about Hegel or something. It's going to be...
Well, I mean, it would be quite a stretch. OK, let's move on to the Telegraph now, Lewis. Can we still trust the census?
Pansexual population was usually inflated in census by faulty coding, and this is the British census takers, which is the Office of National statistics, right?
And they found there were 110,000 pansexual people. Apparently, there's only 48,000.
Only 48,000.
That still seems quite a lot to me.
And what exactly is a pansexual? Is someone who likes frying pans? Maybe someone who gets off being in the kitchen.
Well, no, it's someone who's attracted to all gender identities. No, it's a bisexual.
Yeah, no, I thought bisexuals were like greedy.
It's just a nothing. It's a nothing way for people to get on the grievance hierarchy to sort of say, "Oh, aren't I oppressed?" No, you're not oppressed.
Yeah.
Give it a break.
Or maybe they're like desperate for any kind of sex whatsoever.
Look,
They'll look at anything.
There are bisexual people. You don't need your special category.
They just want to cuddle.
Pathetic. Go on, Nick.
Why are you so angry with pansexual?
Because it's so pointless.
I feel offended on behalf of the pansexual community. Whatever it is.
I don't care what people call themselves.
This is your new book, I Hate Pansexuals, by Andrew Doyle, best-selling author. Yeah, I mean, one thing, the last time they did one of these, and the numbers of, like, trans people seemed really high, it turned out there was just a language barrier. A lot of people didn't know what was being asked. So that's a possibility, because although they corrected it down to 48,000, that's still pretty high for a thing that doesn't exist.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's a bit like...
Well, I wouldn't speak like that, because we're going to get all sorts of problems.
I was joking. I think it exists. I support the pansexual community against people like Andrew Doyle.
And how exactly is it different from bisexual, then?
Because they fancy everything.
No, but here's the thing, right? People aren't attracted to the way that other people identify or see themselves. People are attracted to other people. Right, so the idea of being attracted to someone's gender identity makes absolutely no sense whatsoever.
Pan was the goat guy, wasn't he?
Pan was the goat guy.
So maybe they're just attracted to man goats.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's what it's meant all along. In which case, I retract my criticism, because that is a legitimate sexuality. OK, we're going to move on now to this story, which is in the Mirror. What's this one about, Lewis? Carb story. Oh no, this is a Stephen Fry story, and you met Stephen Fry, didn't you?
No, I did meet Stephen Fry. You introduced me to Stephen Fry because we did a fantastic TV show that Andrew produced. Completely wasted that you weren't in the program. You should have been in the program.
I should have been in it, but
you should have been in it, because you're an expert in all these kind of things.
I prefer being the puppet master.
Is that true? I don't think so.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't think so.
Anyway, so the show is... So the headline, anyway,
The headline is Stephen Fry says his addictive impulse started, quote-unquote, addictive impulse started with sweets and developed into a cocaine addiction, which is... is there some kind of video?
Well, we have got a clip. Let's have a look. Of his addiction.
I had this empty hole in me, this vast empty hole that said, feed me. I need this sugar. I need it. And then when it wasn't sugar, it became tobacco. And I smoked. And then in my 20s, it became cocaine. It became that. And I couldn't sit still without going,
So that's a clip from the Dinosaur Hour, which is on every week. That show, the Stephen Fry show, is going to be on this Sunday on GBNews at 9 o'clock. Lewis is mooching around in the background, serving drinks and that kind of thing.
I'm expected to become a big star. It didn't happen, Andrew.
No, sorry about that. But it is interesting, isn't it, what Stephen Fry says, you know, that he's talking about the sort of slippery slope idea.
No,
well, he said that when he was a kid, they were giving him sweets shaped like cigarettes, like white powder like sugar, and it sort of
we all had the cigarette sweets. Everyone saw the cigarette sweets and the beer bottle sweets.
And all of that sort of stuff.
Can I just say about that clip, what's happened there is, he says, I went from sweets to tobacco to cocaine. His income has gone up is what's happened there. He's got more successful, right?
And that's every single person. If you go to any addict in the world, they all started with sweets. Because every child has sweets. So,
right. No child starts with heroin and gets onto sweets.
He's talking about having an addictive personality, isn't he? You know, and that's that kind of thing.
Everyone's addicted to sugar.
Everybody's addicted to sugar. Everybody's addicted to cocaine if they had a chance. It's one of those
I'm not addicted to cocaine.
No, they would be if it was free and it was available. People would do it, and they did do it. Yes, I'm speaking for myself and for everyone.
You're addicted to hating
The truth is, sugar is addictive. It raises your uric acid level, which turns off the mitochondria, which stops the leptins from telling the body to stop.
Aren't they flowers?
It sounds like the Phantom Menace. You're talking about mitochondria.
He's making words up. He does this whenever he starts blathering on about biology. You make words up. There's no such thing as a leptin.
Classic Team World.
I'm an orthocologist.
OK, moving on now. This next story is in the Daily Mail, a story about those dangerous Conservatives, Nick.
Yeah, more than 200 Cambridge University students signed a letter saying they feel unsafe, in that voice, after Conservative Association booked hall for dinner and demand Christ College stop society's alcohol-fueled event. Alcohol again, even worse than sweets. So the Cambridge University Conservative Association, Cooker, not to be confused with Cooks, say they tried to book an event. There was an argument about whether the Bridge Mass event should take precedence. There was various arguments, but these people invoked the classic thing that they didn't feel safe. Why would
Conservatives make them feel unsafe? It's not true, is it? It's a tactic to get the event cancelled, basically.
Ben Shapiro is quite scary when he speaks really fast. I mean, he's been speaking at a few of these Oxfam occasions. I don't know. It's funny, isn't it? Because many people have said this, but they think that violence is safe, but words and conservative associations are. I mean, these are many of the same people probably who are sort of quasi-celebrating Hamas. You know.
Well, here's what I'm going to say. I don't think it's real. I think it's a tactic. I think when if they were to just say, oh look, there are some people coming and we don't agree with their opinions, nothing would be done. But if you say I'm unsafe, all of a sudden the university has a responsibility, a duty of care to do something about it.
Instead of saying just grow up. The problem is they didn't have a calendar because this was they had a conflict.
The most tenuous link to the calendar I've ever seen.
They had, because it was November 25th, there were two groups that they were fighting over. They could have looked on the calendar. This is the Lewis Schaefer calendar, which is available.
The link is
which is available down there. Down there, see, it says November 25th.
Lewis,
and this is available at Lewis Schaefer.
You can't use this show to advertise your dodgy merch.
And there's a discount for pansexual discount, 10%.
Is there a discount for pansexuals?
There might be. You know what? If you say I want a 10% discount, it's only...
I mean, you do look very good in that photograph. And you're just showing off,
look really.
But you've been airbrushed till all
his head's been photoshopped onto someone's body, obviously, but it's...
I have enough Lewis Schaefer merchandise, so I don't need any more, frankly. So stop flogging it. All right, coming up in the final section, we have women losing out on divorce settlements and paying more to encourage civilised behaviour in restaurants. You won't want to miss that.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
This time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Ah!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GBNews.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious?
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows...
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. Join me, Mark Dolan, Fridays and Saturdays from 9, Sundays from 10. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners, your first look at Saturday's newspapers. We're going to start this final section with The Guardian. Lewis, it turns out women lose more in divorce than men.
Quelle surprise! Well, whether that's true or not, that's what The Guardian looks at all these. Anyway, the women losing out as couples try to divorce on the cheap. So
how do you do that?
How do you do that? You just file the papers, which is what I tried to do, and I got screwed myself. You wouldn't realize how easy it is to get divorced. The point is, this is a tragic story because, first of all, what The Guardian is saying is they're saying poor women, it's a woe is me women, that women need to get more. When the fact is, women end up so far ahead of men. 90% of divorces are instituted by women if they're college educated. You know this. If they're college educated.
So is the solution not to get married?
75% of women?
75% of women normally, but if you're a university educated, you
don't marry an educated woman.
Yeah, they say they don't have much money, but they've been sitting at home doing nothing, but not nothing, looking after the kids is the most important.
Nick, isn't it just more reasons not to get married?
It does sound that way, but
or get a prenup.
It's the Guardian trying to destabilise the family. Yeah, I mean, but what they're saying is that actually the legal costs aren't as prohibitive as you think. Most people don't even use them, and if they do, this is what it claims anyway, or many people don't. Nearly a quarter of divorcees said it costs less than £1,000, so they're saying it's a bit of a myth.
Right.
But then you do also hear that it's very expensive. You hear that men are 8 times more likely to commit suicide after divorce, so there are these stats knocking around as well.
I've been there, and women have most of the breaks.
How many times have you been divorced, Lewis?
I've been divorced one really bad time.
One really bad time. So you're basing your analysis on
I
studied
it. I studied it. I've been obsessed about this. I wasn't always obsessed with food. I was obsessed with divorce issues.
You were studying divorces?
Yeah, and I studied divorce.
What's the word for an expert in divorce?
It's Families Need Fathers is the group.
I meant like a divorceologist or something.
They're the guys that dress as Batman and go up the
no,
Big Ben.
That's
Fathers for Justice.
That's Fathers for Justice.
So
they're good guys.
What do divorcees for justice dress like?
No, Families Need Fathers. Those are the losers like me who would go to court to see if they could win and spend money.
You should have done the Batman thing.
I should have done the Batman thing. I would have been happier and
let's face it, you would have looked good. You could really pull that.
No, I wasn't that good looking at the time.
You'd be the Adam West Batman.
I wasn't a naturally grey hair.
Okay.
Before you lost the weight.
We're going to move on to Saturday's Daily Mail. Nick, children misbehaving in restaurants. That's a bugbear of mine.
Yes, well, it's a fiery GMB debate, Andrew. We're going to do a fiery debate about a fiery debate. And it was an author, I can't even bother reading this whole headline, but we're going to have to. Fiery GB debate.
It's too long.
Yeah, it's too long. It was Anna May Mangan, whatever, was arguing with Karina something on one of these shows I don't watch. Karina White, and they were saying whether you should have children in a restaurant or not. And apparently the Tokyo, I can't say words. There's a restaurant in Georgia that thinks you should have an adult surcharge on the menu for adults that are unable to parent, i.e. they let their kids run riot. And I actually kind of agree. I mean, I hate this story because it puts me in this conflict between what I advocate versus how I live. Yeah. Because I think people should have kids, and it's great, have as many kids as possible, save the birth rate, save our society. But they are annoying in restaurants and in public. And
no, I think you
should be separated.
By all means reproduce if you feel the need, but my view would be once you've made that decision, you can't then go to restaurants and theatres.
You can't be in society.
No, you can't. You have removed yourself from society. That's the price you pay. And people tell me it's worth it. People really like their children. But I think it's actually really rude to bring some squalling brat.
You're trying to enjoy the opera.
A restaurant, or to an opera.
Because you hate children, Andrew.
No, I don't hate children. I just don't want them anywhere.
He doesn't understand.
And I think this society, British society, is a society of child hatred. It's
not child hatred, Lewis. I just want to watch a play without some brat squalling in my ear.
Right, because you should be...
It's very convenient for you, though, isn't it, Andrew, because you don't really have to face it, do you?
I do. Well, yeah, but I do. I did a stand-up gig in a big theatre where there was a baby screaming.
I suppose you could face it.
I mean, it's outrageous.
Yeah, but that's...
And so selfish, the idea that, just because I wanted to reproduce, I wanted my genes to carry on, I'm going to ruin everyone else's night out. How selfish. Get over your cheap self.
Maybe the baby didn't find you funny, Andrew.
The baby most certainly did not. So babies have bad taste in comedy.
It's a personal thing.
Yeah, I'm just upset about that.
You hate pansexuals and babies.
Pansexuals and babies. That's the theme of the night. We're going to move on to The Independent now. Lewis, what's this? A new method for stealing museum treasures?
Well, I mean, this has been done forever. They've dug in from below. Thieves cut hole through a museum floor and steal priceless silver antiques.
I saw that in a Mission Impossible film, I'm pretty sure.
Yes, it's always that way where they come... That was the one where they came down in the thing. They've come up, and this is in a museum. It's the Yeomanry man, I don't know how to pronounce that, museum in Newark.
Yeomanry.
Yeomanry. That's right. Thank you. Thank you, Nick. Yeomanry. And they always say these things are priceless, but they're able to buy them. Somebody's going to pay for them.
Somebody's paying for them. Well, they must, I mean, if they're going to go to all that effort to steal them, there must be a market for these, what are they, muskets and things like that?
Well, they took some weird stuff. Sorry, they took the sister piece to the Wimbledon's women's singles trophy.
Which is silver. It's not that.
Oh, yeah, you could melt that down and make a nice trinket.
They took a cavalry trumpet. They took a weird kind of statuette.
Which is probably silver as well.
Yeah, that's true.
It would make more sense to go for like a jeweller's or, branch of H. Samuel, something like that. I'm not suggesting people do, but, that would make more sense, wouldn't it? I would have thought.
Well, it's from a military museum, and I think at the end of the day, I'm one of these people. I am a crime
expert.
Aficionado.
Absolutist. People, if you steal something from a military museum, death penalty.
I mean, that's very extreme, I would say.
I agree.
You agree as well?
Yeah.
Right, well, for balance, I'm going to say I totally think that's appalling. And I do, actually.
Yeah.
OK, we're going to move on to the Daily Star now, Nick, and a development in understanding mental health. What's this?
Yes.
Depression.
Humans bonking. You see how I was surprised because I was thinking it's that, and then you said mental health. Humans bonking with now extinct species could be the key to depression, experts say. The experts are back. And there's a link between a gene found in some people today, not all, and a certain primate called the Denisovans. Why can I pronounce your words but not the words in my article? that met in Asia. People basically mated with these things, and then some people have lower levels of zinc and so they're depressed.
So tens of thousands of years ago, some of our ancestors had sex with these sort of monkey beasts.
It's nonsense.
And that causes us to be depression. I mean, I'd be quite depressed if I did something like that.
Well, aren't they saying? They're saying that they know whatever it is. They had low levels of zinc, and zinc is linked to depression. And I take 50 milligrams of zinc every day. One of the few, yeah.
And is that why you're always so upbeat?
Well, compared to how I used to be, yes. Yeah. I mean, I'm totally depressed like crazy.
I'm going to put it to you, Lewis, that your zinc intake is not working. It's not helping. Because you came in here in such a curmudgeonly mood, I thought, oh, God, I'm going to have to put up with him all night.
Yeah. Well, I think my mood has improved.
I think your ancestors had sex with a lot of these monkey beasts.
You know what? It's quite possible. It's true because I had my DNA tested.
Yeah, and I can sort of see it in your brow. It's there.
As a scientist, I just want to say evolution isn't real.
There we go. Always with the balance. That's what Nick's here for. Anyway, the show is nearly over, so let's have another quick look at Saturday's front pages. So we're going to start there with the Daily Mail. Sex parties and the ruthless Tory clique who secretly make and break prime ministers. That's Nadine Dorris's new book, which is being serialised in the Mail. The Daily Telegraph has BBC crisis over £1.7 billion pension bill for stars. The Times is leading with Chief Rabbi's protest fears. The Eye has election boost for Labour as former Tory Chancellor Ken Clarke backs Rachel Reeves. Daily Express, hate marches are an affront to British values. And The Guardian, Israel rules out ceasefire. Those were your front pages. That's all we've got time for. But thank you to my guests, Lewis Schaefer and to Nick Dixon. We're back tomorrow at 11 o'clock when Lewis will be here with Cressida Wetton and Leo Kurse. Ooh. And if you're watching the 5am repeat show, please do stick around because it's time for breakfast.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the dinosaur hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GBNews.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GBNews.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christys, at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to Lee Anderson's Real World. We've got some cracking guests on the show tonight. We've got Niall Gardner. He's coming on my show for the very first time. We've got a right voice, a right-leaning voice. That's Linda Doobally. She's a journalist and broadcaster. The left voice tonight is Matthew Larzer. He's back on the show. He's going to be banging on about 13 years of Tory rule. We've also got Back in the Day with Sue Cook, legendary BBC broadcaster. And we've got a lovely young lady on tonight, just some cracking impressions. That's Francine Lewis. But first, let's go to the news.
Good evening. Your top stories from the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister says plans by some groups to protest during Remembrance commemorations are provocative and disrespectful. In a statement, Rishi Sunak said the right to remember in peace and dignity must be protected. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer echoed those comments, saying he supports the police in whatever action is needed. It comes after reports of plans by demonstrators to march during Remembrance events, calling for a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war. The Foreign Secretary James Cleverly earlier said the focus should remain on Remembrance. The Israeli military has confirmed 260 IDF troops have been wounded in the fighting in Gaza. People in the north of the enclave have been facing intense bombardment. The Israeli Prime Minister says there'll be no pause in fighting until more than 240 hostages are freed by Hamas. It comes as the US Secretary of State's been meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu to discuss steps to minimise civilian casualties. Anthony Blinken said a humanitarian pause was important to help get aid into the Strip. Scotland's First Minister Humza Yousaf says his family has been able to leave Gaza through the Rafah crossing. They're among 92 British nationals trapped in the enclave that are approved to travel through into Egypt today as the border opens again for limited evacuations. Palestinian officials say more than 700 foreign nationals have crossed in the past 2 days, including dozens of critically injured people. In other news, 2 women have been charged under the Terrorism Act after images of paragliders were displayed at a pro-Palestinian march in central London. 29-year-old Hiba Al-Hayi and 26-year-old Pauline Ankunda are accused of carrying or displaying an article to arouse suspicion they're supporters of the terrorist group Hamas. The incident occurred last month. They've both been bailed and they'll appear at Westminster's Magistrates' Court on the 10th of November. Conservative MP Bob Stewart's been found guilty of a racially aggravated public order offence. The Beckenham MP racially abused a man after he allegedly told him to go back to Bahrain outside the Foreign Office last December. He also told him, "You're taking money off my country," and to go away. The Chief Magistrate said Stewart will not be jailed. And Zara Alina's family have described the reduction of her killer's sentence as a shallow triumph, which sends a disheartening message to women. Jordan McSweeney killed the 35-year-old law graduate as she walked home from a night out in East London last June. McSweeney, who refused to attend his sentencing hearing last December, was handed a 38-year life sentence. The Court of Appeal ruled that that was too high and has reduced it to 33 years. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying Play GB News. Now it's back to Lee Anderson's Real World.